these, or one of his theories to what these modern day UFOs could be, is it could be one of these other civilizations that are just here to make sure we don't become quote unquote grabby, or we don't expand beyond our solar system. Something around that.
I believe that's pretty accurate. I wrote I did the documentary, The Black Knight Satellite, Beyond the Signal. It just aired. We had a big movie premiere. It aired in some theaters, actually. And now it's on my TV network, Forbidden Knowledge TV. And it's our #1 documentary right now. It's actually up for 3 film awards right now.
Oh, wow.
And there's this object orbiting Earth that is estimated to be there for 13,000 years. And how we get this number is the NSA analyzed a signal from it. A couple of astrophysicists analyzed the signal, and some ham radio operators back in the 50s also got the same signal, all independent, came up with the same translation, decoding of the signal, that it was saying it was from the Epsilon Boötis constellation. Now, I heard about this about 10 years ago, and I got really, really interested in the story, and I realized it was even deeper than that the article about this came out in Time magazine by one of the astronomers that was researching this thing and decoding the signal. And I said, Time magazine picked this up in 1960. Then I saw some reports of it following Sputnik, when Russians sent Sputnik to orbit the moon and come back. And I said, this thing has course correction. Then they discovered that it was in a polar orbit. It had changed course and went into a polar orbit, something we couldn't do until just recent times. We didn't even know how to get a polar orbit orbiting from pole to pole. In order to create a lot of the megalithic structures that you've seen, like the pyramid complexes and everything else, you need a polar orbit.
How come we haven't been able to have a polar? You're saying something orbiting the Earth, like from a up and down vertical.
Yeah, from pole to pole. So this is the Earth.
Instead of going around the equator, it's going the other. It's going.
We just got that. Maybe I think we ended up getting it official like in the late 1980s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but this thing has been orbiting in a polar orbit from the 1950s. Everybody was looking up at the sky and tracking things in the sky as we were trying to go in the space race against Russia. And especially when Sputnik launched in 1960, everybody was looking up to the sky. Everybody was scanning the sky. We had some Mercury stuff going on. And the Black Knight satellite, the object itself is interesting because Epsilon Boötis comes up individually several times. So I looked into Epsilon Boötis. I'm like, well, let me research this place. Found out there's something called a void there. This void is called the Boötis void. It's the largest known void in the universe. It's not even dust in this area, going on for about 250 million light years or some crazy spanning number like that. And so I saw Michio Kaku, the famous theoretical physicist, talking about it. And he said that in that void, it looks like light's being bent around that area. And he says that we think that it's it could be a cloaked advanced civilization. And I was like, that's pretty interesting because the Black Knight is giving up this location. Now you're saying it might be a cloaked advanced civilization based on, theoretical physicist hypothesis. So I looked into it a little bit deeper and discovered that Boötis is owned by Enlil from the ancient Sumerian tablets. These beings owned planets and moons, and some even owned constellations. So I'm like, wow.
So in these tablets, it says there's a guy named Boötis who owns...
Enlil owns Boötis.
Oh, Enlil owns this
right.
Boötis void.
And Enlil was the ruler of the earth at that time. And guess what Enlil had in the tablets? He had the all-seeing eye. The eye of Sauron, which has made it into the Lord of the Rings. He had the all-seeing eye. They copied that from the tablets.
Wow.
The Lord of the Rings copied it from the tablets.
Oh my gosh.
So he can see... Now, listen to this. He can see population densities on the planet. He can see who had crops, who didn't have crops. He can see weather patterns all over the earth. And you can only do that with a polar orbiting satellite. Because as the earth spins on its axis, the satellite's orbiting this way. And so as the earth is as the satellite's orbiting this way, it's taking swaths of data.
Right.
And it's scanning topography, it's scanning patterns, it's scanning everything you need, right? Barometric pressures and all that kind of stuff. You can see scanning densities. You can scan for population densities. All that can come from one satellite orbiting the planet in a polar orbit. He had that. He knew what was going on, and unfortunately, he was a pretty evil dude. If humans were getting too outrageous in one area or overpopulating an area, he would just have them killed. He would this is in the tablets, just kill them. Kill 100,000, kill 200,000. He would dry their crops out. He would spray stuff on their crops and to dry them out so they can starve to death. All this kind of crazy stuff. This guy was just ruthless. He saw us just as animals. He didn't see us as real sentient beings. But this guy owned Boötis. So I said, wait a minute. So the more I dug into it, I realized that the Black Knight satellite is this object that's still orbiting our planet right now. NASA, it's on NASA's server. They call it space junk.
Space junk.
Yeah, they call it space junk. They don't know what it is. It's been there. The STS-88 mission did a flyby and caught a great HD image of this thing. It's about estimated 15 tons.
It's in our orbit.
Oh yeah, it's in our orbit.
So it's not far out. It's not outer space. It's
no, it's at Lagrange point 4, I believe.
Okay.
And it's orbiting out there, and it's still there. They won't mess with it because it makes no sense to mess with it. You don't know what type of self-defense system or mechanism this thing may have. But the reason why I think it's important, based on what you were telling me about the gentleman, is because I believe that this thing is watching us. That's what the whole documentary is about. And I have 20 incredible researchers in the document, including quantum physicists in the documentary with me, and astrophysicists. I think it's watching us, and I believe that it's using quantum entanglement to transmit everything in real time, what's going on Earth, back to home base at Boetis.
Wow.
And that this could be the grabby civilization that you're talking about, that is watching and making sure we don't get too crazy, because they don't want us to be a threat. They talked about us becoming a threat in the Sumerian tablets. In the myth of Adapa, they talked about it. They talked about it in the Atrahasis epic. They talked about it in the Epic of Gilgamesh. All these tablets, they talk about us potentially rising up and even superseding them, and making sure that we never found out that we don't need them. This is an ancient tablets, and now finding out that he is the constellation of Boetis is attributed to Enlil, and this thing gives off the signal to Boetis. Even in the NSA document, which is read in my documentary, it all comes together like, wow, what is going on here? So I think your guys' theory about grabby civilization, I believe it. I believe it 100%.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept, and it makes a lot of sense. Another weird thing is which I find fascinating is the transmedium aspect of these UFOs, like being in the water and going in and under the water. And it makes a lot of sense because the oceans are one of the things that we have explored very little of. Yes,
absolutely. You look at Christopher Columbus, in his actual captain's log, he documents. Now think about this. You're talking about the 1400s, right? There's no light pollution. Right. Something comes up out of the ocean, a bright light, a gigantic bright light comes up out of the ocean and goes up into space. It's documented in his in his captain's log. You only write down things in a captain's log that are important. Right. And that's in there. So something came, that's an anomaly. What is coming up with, there's no light bulbs back then. So what is it that came out of the ocean by the ship that can light up the sky?
Yeah. That's pretty fucking crazy, man.
Yeah.
What I heard you mention before, I wanted to talk